So friends, it's not just that song, it's not just Temple, CNN, print media, so many others are highlighting 1968 as one of the most consequential years in American history. Rabbi Bowman and I wanted her dad, from whom Katie's music gene is definitely linked, to co-lead tonight's music, since music was a defining feature of that era. The top 5 songs of 1968 were, in order of popularity, number 1, Hey Jude by the Beatles. Number 2, Love is Blue by Paul Moria. Number 3, Honey by Bobby Goldsboro. And number 4, Sittin' by the Dock of the Bay by Memphis's Otis Redding. Number 5 in 68 was an anthem of liberty by the Rascals entitled People Got to Be Free. And while Hey Jude was a love song, its theme was the need for optimism in a troubled time, with the Beatles urging listeners, and I quote, to take a sad song and make it better. One traumatic event followed another during the span of 12 months, a half-century ago. Not only 2 shocking assassinations and violent opposition to the escalating Vietnam War, the civil rights movement was growing impatient. There were severe economic problems, hardening class differences, mix in the rise of feminism, doubts about our nation's leaders, the new sexual freedom made possible by the birth control pill, and a ferocious culture war over values issues and respect for institutions. You end up with this statement from Bill Galston, a former senior White House advisor for President Bill Clinton. Quote, "It was a terrible year. The Tet Offensive drove home the unwinnability of the war, and the assassinations drove home the despair. I think it was the worst year for American society since the Civil War." And journalist Kenneth Walsh added, "Many Americans thought this country was having a nervous breakdown. The public mood was the growing sense that a horrible toxin had been let loose in the land. In some ways," he continued, "America nearly lost its mind and its soul. In other ways, though, the nation reinvented itself and became a more tolerant, less constrained place, more willing to let people express their individuality and challenge authority." Now, there are obvious parallels to where our world and nation stand. It's eerie. And no matter where you are in the political spectrum, on issues like the Second Amendment and gun rights, both of our Temple congressmen, David Kustoff and Steve Cohen, have had to wade through crowds of high school and college students from across the country who are feeling they've had enough, not of gun rights, but of gun violence in America. And the racism that's always lived in corners of America is back on Main Street and prime time. I checked for this sermon. Wiser people here knew this. I did not. That George Wallace captured nearly 15%, not of the Southern vote, but the national vote in 1968, as Nixon began his beatdown of opponents. Wallace's white nationalism is sadly still alive. We have come a long way since Captain Kirk's first interracial kiss on Star Trek, 1968, with the African-American actress Nichelle Norris. It caused an uproar. But as I watched Saturday Night Live satirize recent political attacks on institutions in our government, it was like watching it as I was anticipating tonight, an extension of that 60s TV show Laugh-In, with its political one-liners and wacky surreal moments. Those attending tonight's 68 reunion, and especially your confirmation class rabbi and speaker at the dinner following the service, can answer far better than this rabbi whether the parallels between 2018 and 1968 in terms of consequence and tumult are similar. But it does seem clear, broadly speaking, that both then and now, there is a sense among many that America has lost its moorings, and no one knows where it will end. And fittingly, this week's Torah portion, as much as any other in the Torah, provides an anchor of hope. Beha'alotcha means when you kindle the lights. It captures the essence of what it means to be a Jew and to live Judaism. Beha'alotcha et hanerot is how it opens in Numbers. When you kindle the lights, our task as Jews is to illumine, isn't it? Our duty as Jews is to cause the light of faith and hope to glow, to dispel the darkness of ignorance and gloom, to be a witness of God's Spirit and presence, just like that Poplar Montgomery eternal light above the Holy Ark. Our mission as Jews is to model God, to turn darkness into light, despair into hope, doubt into trust, chaos into order. And that responsibility is everyone's, not just rabbis like Wax and Danziger in 68 or Bowman and Greenstein in 2018. And how do I know it's everyone's? Because that's what the Torah says this week. When Moses asks God, why have you laid the burden of all this upon me? And Moses is counseled to appoint 70 experienced lay leaders, not only to share leadership with him, but to share the spirit of prophecy with them. And Moses defends the right of the people, you, not the rabbi, the people, to act as prophets. And sure enough, 70 elders begin to prophesy in the name of God, but two young Woodstock guys, Eldad and Medad, well, they weren't at Woodstock, but you get the point. They were not authorized. They began to prophesy in God's name. They're unauthorized prophets, and Joshua, Moses' assistant, wants to stop them. But Moses answers with this line in the Torah: would that all God's people were prophets. Suddenly we see a new Torah ideal, that prophecy is not limited to the gifted few. It's an amazing insight from the Torah. Every person has the potential to be a prophet. Prophecy is not a gift given to a few blessed individuals. It's an opportunity given to every human being, which calls for an explanation. What is prophecy? Many believe it's the ability to tell the future. That's impossible. The future is wide open and not set in stone. So what is prophecy? It's the ability to hear the voice of conscience today. It's that deep insight in each of our souls we sometimes have. I know you've had it. That aha moment when we realize this is the right thing to do. This is what God wants me to do or doesn't want us to do. A prophet is a person in 1968 or 2018 who says, you know, we may not be able to eliminate hunger, but as the poet says, we can still feed each other. We may not be able to eliminate loneliness, but we can still hold each other. We may not be able to eliminate pain, but we can live a life of compassion. These are timeless messages derived from Torah that we heard in the 60s and will hopefully hear more of in the years ahead, not for our sake, but for the sake of our children and their children's future. All we are saying is give peace a chance. Isn't just a lyric. It's a cry top military leaders today know is necessary given the unimaginable destruction a major war today would bring, as if we haven't seen enough with hundreds of thousands already dead. So in retrospect, maybe 1968 was a humbling year, which is also relevant, and this is the final point I'll share from this week's Torah portion. A humbling year. You know, this is the one time in the Torah it says Moses was very humble, more humble than any human on the face of the earth. How was Moses, the person who reached the highest comprehension of God that any human is able to attain, how was he humble in his understanding of knowing God? Here's how. Only one who attains the level of Moses, who truly knows God, understands that no person can ever completely understand or know God. And that's the ultimate humility, isn't it? That's the truest humility. We cannot understand everything about God because God is beyond human comprehension. And that's the highest level of humbleness which only Moses was able to attain. Rashi, the greatest commentator, said, all the prophets looked through a dark glass and thought they saw God. But only Moses looked through a clear glass in order to see God. And after looking through that clear glass, Moses realized that there was nothing to see, that he had not really seen God's face, but been touched by a brush of God, a brush of God's attributes of kindness and justice and compassion and healing and goodness and love. Isn't that amazing? What made our greatest figure, Moses, most humble, we learned this week, is that given the clear glass to see God, he realizes that no one person is more God than anyone else, including himself. So stop trying to be God, Moses tells Joshua. Instead, tell all those people out there to focus on the attributes of God. Kindle those lights, this week's Torah portion says, whether in 1968, 2018, or any other date in this lifetime. Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be, and let us all say, Amen.